Hey everyone, welcome back. We're going to be diving deep into the world of Bitcoin today.
Yeah, sounds good.
It feels like everything is changing so fast right now.
Yeah, definitely a lot of news.
Have you been keeping up with all of it?
I try to.
Yeah, there's a lot of buzz. You know, the market's been kind of swinging. There's bold predictions, and even governments are starting to view Bitcoin differently. It's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So we've got a few sources that we are going to take a look at today.
Okay.
We've got the Coin Republic, we've got Cointelegraph, and AMB Crypto.
Sounds good.
Just glancing at the headlines. We've got a major liquidation event, Bitcoin potentially hitting $1 million, and some discussion about whether Bitcoin will continue to rule the crypto world or if altcoins are going to start closing the gap.
Yeah, that $1 million prediction is always an interesting one.
Yeah, it definitely gets people's attention.
For sure.
So let's start with the Coin Republic article about that huge liquidation. Almost $335 million gone in a flash, impacting over 100,000 traders.
Wow. What happened there?
Well, you know, it's interesting. It's not just a random dip in the market.
Right.
It seems like it's connected to some uncertainty around how the U.S. government is approaching a potential crypto reserve.
Mm-hmm.
They're talking about including altcoins like XRP and Cardano alongside Bitcoin, and that's causing some serious debate.
So it's not just about, individual coins going up or down. It's about how governments might start shaping the whole crypto landscape.
Exactly. And we're seeing some strong opinions on this.
Right.
The Coin Republic article mentioned Brian Armstrong, the CEO of Coinbase. He's advocating for a Bitcoin-only reserve,
Oh, wow.
calling Bitcoin the natural successor to gold. I wonder, does that strengthen Bitcoin's image as a safe haven asset, or does it potentially limit the growth of the crypto market as a whole?
That is a great question. I mean, the idea of the U.S. essentially endorsing Bitcoin as a kind of digital gold is pretty huge.
Right. But it definitely raises some eyebrows, especially for people who are excited about the potential of other cryptocurrencies.
Yeah, definitely something to watch. Think about it. If the U.S. really leans into this, it could send a powerful message to other countries.
Right.
Would we see a domino effect with other nations adopting similar strategies? Or would it spark a sort of crypto race with different countries backing different coins? It makes you think, doesn't it?
Absolutely. This is about more than just individual investments now. It's almost like a geopolitical chess match is unfolding.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears for a second and talk about those Bitcoin price predictions.
Okay.
Cointelegraph seems a bit cautious, but AMBCrypto is going all in on Bitcoin, hitting $1 million, and way sooner than many experts predicted. What are they seeing that others aren't?
Well, Cointelegraph is pointing to some key technical levels that we need to consider. The 50-week moving average, for example. It's a line on the price chart that traders watch closely.
Right.
Historically, Bitcoin has tended to hold strong above this level. And then there's the psychological barrier of $69,000, Bitcoin's all-time high back in 2021.
So those are like signposts that traders use to gauge the market's sentiment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But even with those indicators, predicting Bitcoin's price is notoriously difficult.
It's like trying to predict the weather sometimes. There are so many factors at play. On the one hand, we have those technical levels. On the other hand, we have the news and overall market sentiment, which can be incredibly unpredictable.
And let's not forget about those bold predictions from people like Samson Mow, the CEO of JEA3. He's moved up his $1 million Bitcoin prediction by almost a decade.
Wow.
He seems pretty convinced that the U.S. government's stance on crypto is going to be a major catalyst.
Yeah, he's definitely betting big on that. And it's a fascinating argument. If the U.S. really does embrace Bitcoin, it could have a huge impact on adoption and consequently on the price. But it also raises the question, what happens if that government support wavers or if other countries take a different approach? We're in uncharted territory here.
So how do we make sense of all this? We've got technical indicators, wild predictions, and now this geopolitical layer. It's almost overwhelming.
It is a lot to unpack, that's for sure. I think it's important to remember that Bitcoin is still relatively young. We're essentially witnessing the birth of a new asset class.
Right.
And with that comes a lot of volatility and uncertainty.
But isn't that part of what makes it so exciting?
Yeah.
It feels like we're at the edge of something truly transformative, and that's pretty incredible to be a part of.
For sure.
Speaking of transformation, let's talk about how many people are actually using Bitcoin around the world. Cointelegraph has this stat that really caught my eye. They're saying only 4% of the global population will own Bitcoin by 2025. 4%? That seems surprisingly low, doesn't it?
It does seem low, especially when you consider all the hype surrounding Bitcoin. but I think it highlights a few important points. First, Bitcoin is still primarily a phenomenon in developed countries. The US, for example, has an adoption rate of around 14%, which is significantly higher than the global average. But there are still barriers to entry for many people around the world. Things like financial literacy, access to technology, and even just understanding what Bitcoin is and how it works. And then there's the volatility, which can be intimidating for new investors.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
So even though we hear so much about Bitcoin, it's still early days in terms of global adoption. But those projections show it's going to keep growing. Cointelegraph says global crypto adoption, and that includes more than just Bitcoin will reach 8% by 2025.
Right. It's not just a Bitcoin story anymore. The whole crypto ecosystem is expanding. Which brings us back to this question of Bitcoin's dominance. Will it remain the king of the crypto world, or are we going to see a shift towards altcoins?
AMB Crypto has a whole analysis about this, focusing on Bitcoin's dominance level, which is currently around 62.90%. They even use this phrase, make or break point. What does that mean? Is Bitcoin about to lose its crown?
Well, it's not quite that dramatic, but it is a crucial moment. AMBCrypto talks about Bitcoin trading within an ascending channel. Now imagine a river flowing between two banks. The banks represent the boundaries of this channel, and Bitcoin's price has been moving within these boundaries for a while now.
Okay, I can picture that. So what happens if Bitcoin breaks out of those banks, so to speak?
That's where the make or break idea comes in. If Bitcoin's dominance breaks above the upper boundary of this channel, which is currently around 62.10%, it could signal a surge in buying power for Bitcoin. That could mean significant gains for Bitcoin holders, but it could also put pressure on altcoins.
So it's like Bitcoin is at a fork in the river. It could surge ahead, or it could start to lose ground to other cryptocurrencies.
Exactly. And to figure out which path Bitcoin is likely to take, we need to look at a few things. AMBCrypto mentions the 50-day moving average, which is another line on the chart that traders use to understand short-term price trends. If Bitcoin's price stays above this average, it suggests continued momentum.
So it's like checking the river's current, seeing if it's flowing strongly in Bitcoin's favor.
A good analogy. And then there's this thing called the Ichimoku cloud, which sounds a bit mysterious. It's basically a visual representation of support and resistance levels on the chart. Right now, Bitcoin is near the upper edge of this cloud, which is another indication that we're at a critical decision point.
Okay, I'm getting a sense of all these different forces pushing and pulling on Bitcoin. What does this all mean for someone who's trying to make sense of the crypto market?
I think the key takeaway is that you need to be aware of both the technical indicators and the broader context. Don't just blindly follow the hype or panic when you see a dip in the market.
So we need to look at the charts, understand those technical indicators, but also keep an eye on the big picture, like government regulations and global adoption trends.
Right. And it's important to remember that this is still a relatively new and evolving market. There will be ups and downs, and it's crucial to have a long-term perspective.
It's almost like being an explorer in uncharted territory. You need to be prepared for anything and always keep learning. Speaking of learning, I'm curious about something. We've been talking about Bitcoin as a potential digital gold, but gold is a physical asset. How does Bitcoin, which exists purely in the digital world, compare to something tangible like gold?
That's an interesting question. I think one key similarity is scarcity. Just like there's a limited amount of gold on Earth, there's a limited supply of Bitcoin, 21 million to be exact. This built-in scarcity is one of the reasons why some people believe Bitcoin could hold its value over time.
So the limited supply is like a built-in safeguard against inflation, just like with gold.
That's the idea. And because Bitcoin isn't tied to any particular government or central bank, it's seen by some as a hedge against economic uncertainty or political instability.
But gold is also a tangible asset. You can hold it in your hand, you can make jewelry out of it. Bitcoin doesn't have that same physical presence.
True, but Bitcoin has other advantages. It's easily divisible, making it more practical for everyday transactions. It's also much easier to transfer than physical gold, which makes it a potential tool for cross-border payments.
It's like Gold 2.0, a digital version that's adapted for the modern world. But are there risks unique to Bitcoin that we don't see with gold?
There are definitely risks to consider. Cybersecurity is a big one. If someone gains access to your Bitcoin wallet, they can steal your funds. And because the crypto market is largely unregulated, there's less protection for investors compared to traditional markets.
So it's like a high-stakes game with a lot of potential rewards, but also some inherent risks that need to be managed carefully.
Exactly. And that's why it's so crucial to do your research, understand the technology, and approach crypto investments with a clear head.
Speaking of risks, we've been focusing a lot on market trends and adoption rates. But there's another layer to this that we haven't really touched on, the potential impact of geopolitical events. We briefly mentioned it earlier, but I think it deserves a deeper dive.
You're right. We can't talk about Bitcoin's future without considering the global landscape. Governments around the world are grappling with how to regulate crypto, and their decisions could have a significant impact on the market.
It's like we're seeing a shift in power dynamics. Bitcoin and crypto in general is challenging the traditional financial system, and that's making some people nervous.
Absolutely. Remember when Samson Mow talked about the U.S. becoming a Bitcoin superpower? That kind of statement sends ripples throughout the global community.
Other countries are watching, and they're going to react in different ways. Some might embrace Bitcoin, while others might try to suppress it. It's a fascinating and potentially volatile situation.
And it's not just about government regulations. Think about global conflicts, economic crises, even natural disasters. These events can create uncertainty and volatility in traditional markets, and Bitcoin is likely to be affected as well.
So how do we even begin to make sense of all these potential scenarios? It's almost like trying to predict the future.
Yeah.
It is a bit like gazing into a crystal ball, isn't it?
Yeah.
But even if we can't predict the future, we can at least try to understand the potential forces that might shape it.
Exactly. I think one way to approach this is to think about different scenarios. What happens if, for example, another major economy like China or the European Union decides to embrace Bitcoin?
That would be a game changer, wouldn't it? It could create a ripple effect with other countries feeling pressured to follow suit.
It could. It could lead to a surge in demand for Bitcoin, potentially driving up the price. But it could also lead to increased scrutiny from governments who are wary of Bitcoin's decentralized nature.
So more adoption could be a double-edged sword. It could boost Bitcoin's legitimacy, but it could also bring more regulations and restrictions.
Right. And then there's the flip side. What if we see a major geopolitical crisis or a global economic downturn? How would Bitcoin react in those situations?
We've seen hints of this in the past. Remember when that conflict erupted overseas a few years ago? Bitcoin's price initially dipped, but then it quickly rebounded as people sought alternative safe havens.
That's a key point. Bitcoin is often seen as a risk-on asset, meaning investors tend to buy it when they're feeling optimistic about the economy. But in times of uncertainty, it could potentially act as a hedge against traditional markets.
So it's almost like Bitcoin is playing both sides of the field. It can be a bet on future growth, but it can also be a shield against instability. It's a fascinating paradox.
And that's what makes it so difficult to predict its trajectory. We're in uncharted territory here, and there's no historical precedent to guide us.
It feels like we're all on this wild ride together, trying to navigate the twists and turns as they come. But amidst all this uncertainty, there's one thing I keep coming back to, the power of technology.
That's an important point that often gets overlooked. We've been talking a lot about market trends and geopolitical forces. But at its core, Bitcoin is a technology, and technology is constantly evolving.
Exactly. We've seen so many advancements in the Bitcoin ecosystem in recent years. Things like the Lightning Network, which is making Bitcoin transactions faster and cheaper, and Taproot, which is improving privacy and efficiency.
These innovations are addressing some of the limitations that have held Bitcoin back in the past. They're making it more practical for everyday use and more attractive to a wider range of users.
So even as we grapple with these external forces, the market swings, the government regulations, the global uncertainties, there's this underlying technological evolution that's constantly pushing Bitcoin forward.
It's like a constant tug of war between these different forces. The market might pull Bitcoin in one direction while technology pushes it in another, and the outcome of this tug of war will ultimately determine Bitcoin's fate.
It's a lot to wrap our heads around, but that's what makes this space so compelling. There's always something new to learn, always a new challenge to grapple with. And I, for one, am excited to see what the future holds for Bitcoin and the entire crypto ecosystem.
I couldn't agree more. It's a fascinating time to be witnessing the birth of a new financial paradigm. And I think we're only just scratching the surface of what's possible.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive. We've covered a lot of ground today, from market trends to geopolitical forces to the evolving technology behind Bitcoin.
And I hope we've given you, dear listeners, some food for thought. This is a complex and constantly evolving landscape, and there are no easy answers.
But by understanding the different forces at play, by staying informed and engaged, you can navigate this exciting world with confidence and perhaps even be a part of shaping its future. So as you continue your own crypto journey, keep exploring, Keep learning and keep asking those tough questions. The answers might just surprise you. Until next time, happy diving.
Please help support the channel by subscribing, liking, and commenting.